What's up YouTube? I'm Valentin the Mad, and this is a Gore review of Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway. Before we begin, I'll say straight away, Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway is the lowest scoring game in the Gore review so far. Sure, some things are done well and I will mention those, but the vast majority of the aspects are very lacking to say the least. So you may be asking, why make this review in the first place? Well, for a few reasons. First and foremost, this game has the potential. There is a certain amount of attention put in the gore system, the setting is most fitting for it, and clearly it is meant to be a gritty and brutal World War II experience, rather than something that avoids the uncomfortable aspects of war to get a T rating. Also, it is known that the next game in the series is early in the making, so I want to discuss the latest released installment, what it did right and what needs to be improved. Maybe this video will reach the developers at Gearbox, and maybe some of the suggestions and the feedback will be taken into account. So how gory is Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway? Let's find out. I'll be reviewing every aspect of the game's gore effects, and the score will be set based on 4 categories: body damage, environment, animations and sounds, the feel. Each limb has 1 point of amputation, the head has several damaged variations, and the body can be torn in half. The dismemberment looks pretty good. You see the bone, the muscle tissue, some blood splatter, and even torn clothes. I do think that this game needs more blood splatter around the wound itself and generally on the body. Red Orchestra 2 is a good example of that done right. The bodies that have been torn in half could use some visible organs and bones rather than just generic meat. I want to note that dismembered limbs don't disappear. Now, while it seems pretty obvious to me, unfortunately it's not as obvious to many game developers, so a thumbs up to Gearbox for getting that right. It's a small detail, but it counts. As for the head damage, you have a few variations for the headshots, and the looks of those are very brutal. You see the hole in the head, and the face is covered in blood. But as usual, there are issues. First, it's not a dynamic system. You have about 5 or 6 variations that you will see repeating over and over again. Next, all the variations can be activated only on several specific guns, such as sniper rifles. As for the rest, the amount of variations is much more limited. And on top of that, sometimes it just won't work. You will see nothing happen, even though you clearly shot the enemy at the head. You will also be seeing pieces of the head falling out on impact, but unlike the dismembered limbs, those will vanish as soon as they drop. As for non-dismemberment body damage, there isn't any. This really has been my biggest WTF moment with each game in the series. From the very first one to Hell's Highway, when I was thinking, well, did they actually do it this time? Only to find out that they didn't. And really, I can't emphasize enough how much of a missile that is for this type of a game. Unlike several other games I reviewed in the series, Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway actually is centered around the combat and the violence. Visible bullet wounds are a very basic feature for a game like this, and they absolutely need to be included. The detection of where a bloodstain appears works like this. If you shoot a character, it will stain a surface if there is one behind them. If there is nothing right behind the character, there will be no stains. On dismembering hits, this decal may or may not appear. And that is literally all of the blood spilling mechanics in Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway. So yes, the blood puffs you see on impact mean absolutely nothing. And since there are no bullet wounds, why even bother including something like blood pools? Lacking wouldn't be the right word to describe the blood spilling mechanics. Near damn non-existent is a more accurate definition. So how should this damn spilling work? Simple. Every time you see a blood puff effect, something should be stained. Whether it's behind the character or below them, if you see blood spilling, you should be seeing blood stains. That is simply how fluids work. if a character is wounded, he should be leaving a blood trail until he bandages the wound or bleeds out. And finally, when the character dies, a blood pool should form under him. When a game has terrible blood spilling mechanics, should the aftermath be mentioned? Yes. Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway actually has an option in the graphical settings for bodies to stay infinitely. The blood also stays for a very long time by default and can be configured to stay even longer in the INI files. I am talking about the importance of the aftermath experience in almost every Gore review. And ironically, a game with terrible blood spilling mechanics actually has an option for the mess to stay. As for the response animations, there aren't any. Seriously, no response animations at all. When taking fire, enemies will just keep doing whatever they are doing, totally unaffected. On death, they will simply go ragdoll. The ragdolls actually feel heavy for the most part. Why for the most part? Because enemies get thrown too damn high on explosions, and for some reason, they are elevated on headshots too. Things are a bit different for you and your squad though. Sometimes when your character dies, you will see a death animation, and when a squad mate gets shot, he will drop into an incapacitated state. And you could think, it's that incapacitated state that I always mention in the Gore reviews. That's gotta be great, right? Well, not quite. The most likely reason that happens for squad mates is because they are needed for the story. In the previous games in the series, squad mates will die and get resurrected for the next level. In Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway, they will just get a panic attack and snap out of it for the next chapter. So how to actually nail the animations aspect? Response animations on impact would be a good start. The next move should be changes to behavior when characters are getting wounded. The first threshold of damage would make a character move slower and limp. The next one would drop him to the ground, but he would still try crawling to safety and attempt to shoot you. The last one would disable the character entirely. He would lie on the ground wiggling in pain and cursing the day he joined the Wehrmacht. As for the sounds, all you have is characters' comments during combat. There are no screams of pain on impact and on death. It seemed kind of odd to me, so I tried checking it by killing Germans from point blank distance, and as you can hear, there are no response sounds whatsoever. Now I would usually say that the sound aspect is neglected, but that is actually not true at all. The gun sounds are great, and both your squad mates and the enemies constantly comment during combat and sound very lively at that too, so the issue here is something else. I believe that this is where you see how the animations are directly tied to the sound aspect. The sounds usually accompany the animations, and since there are no response animations, you hear no sounds. The only body damage you will see in Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway is on dismemberment and headshots. Enemies who die from anything else will look as though they are taking a nap. That, along with almost non-existent blood spilling mechanics, and actually non-existent responses in the animations and sound departments, and you will get a gore system that does not feel good at all. So the score for body damage is 8 out of 30. The score for environment is 11 out of 30. The score for animations and sounds is 6 out of 30. I give the feel a score of 2 out of 10. So this gives Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway score system a total score of 27 out of 100. Believe it or not, I still think that this game and the series have the potential, and I hope that the next installment will actually deliver in the gore department. I dig the gameplay, love the setting. Can the next game please be as gory as it should? Hope you enjoyed watching the review. Let me know how you feel in the comment section, and if you liked the video, subscribe and share it with your friends. You can find the link to all of my Gore reviews in the video description. Until next time.